Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. Has Europe prepared a contingency plan for Greece to leave the Eurozone? Meeting in Brussels, European leaders have reaffirmed their commitment to keep Athens in the Eurozone. But behind closed doors, off the record, diplomats will tell you that the prospect of Greece leaving the euro is no longer taboo. This scenario has alarmed investors, with the euro plunging to its lowest level in more than 2 years. For more on this story, I'm glad to be joined by Alexander Stubb. He's the Finnish Minister for European Affairs and Foreign Trade. Mr. Stubb, thank you for joining us. Now, tell us more. What's the story? Have we broken a taboo here? Is Greece doomed to leave the euro?
I think it's our job actually to break taboos, and every member state and every European institution should prepare for the worst case scenario. Our aim is to keep Greece in the euro, but we have to prepare for different types of scenarios. So I'm sure that every member state, every institution has a contingency plan. At the end of the day, it's all in the hands of the Greeks themselves, and they're going to vote on it on the 17th of June.
So your country is working like others on a contingency plan, I imagine. Is it manageable to have Greece leave the euro?
Well, I kind of don't want to speculate with that question, because it sort of increases the hysteria that we see around Europe at this particular moment. What I can say is that had Greece left the euro 2 years ago, the consequences would have been catastrophic. There would have been spillover effects. A lot of European economies would have gone down, exports would have gone down. Now we have built different types of firewalls with, for instance, permanent crisis mechanisms, so I'm more relaxed on whatever can happen.
You're more relaxed, but if we open the box, we could see investors speculate on Spain as the next country leaving the Eurozone. Aren't we creating a precedent if we accept this fact?
Well, I think the Greek case is very isolated and very different. I mean, after all, in Greece, it's a question of public debt. We've helped them out about 170 times more than we helped out in the Marshall Plan after World War II, whereas the Spanish case is more a case of the banking sector. So in that sense, two different cases. Then you might go ahead and say, well, how about the Irish and the banking sector? Well, Irish and the banking sector, their banking sector was a huge piece of their GDP. This is not the case in Spain. So I'm fairly relaxed about Spain as well.
You told me it's in the hands of Greek voters. Does this mean that the elections, which will take place on the 17th of June, are regarded as a referendum in favour or against the euro?
I think they are de facto a referendum in favour or against the euro. We are in a situation whereby you cannot have your cake and eat it too. 70% of the Greek population wants to stay in the euro, but at the same time 70% say that they're not going to do the structural changes. For us, the buck stops here. If they don't do the structural changes, they're pretty much on their own. We cannot give them a blank check. If they do the structural changes, then I think life will continue as it stands.
So if Greek voters decide to endorse the so-called anti-bailout parties, I'm thinking of Mr. Tsipras, it's the end of the game? It means Greece will have to leave the euro?
It depends on what kind of policies the Greek government after the elections will drive. If they say that we will not continue with the program imposed by the IMF, the ECB and the Commission, then I think the game is over. If they, on the other hand, continue with the program, then I think life goes on.
In retrospect, when you look back at what was agreed 2 years ago, haven't we been too harsh with the Greeks? They complain, they said this bailout was there to help us, but it was also a punishment to make sure that other countries wouldn't choose that road.
I'll give you one example which proves that we have not been harsh, but we have helped quite a lot. Marshall aid post-World War II was 2.5% of the GDP of the whole area. What we have now given Greece is 174% of their GDP. So in that sense, I think if you compare these two, you'll see that we've helped the Greeks a hell of a lot already.
Let's move to the informal dinner that took place in Brussels on Wednesday night, well into the night, I should say. It was, of course, the baptism of fire for François Hollande, the new French president. He arrived in Brussels. He said he's vowed to put growth back on the table. He wants to move away from austerity towards growth. This is certainly a criticism of the policies that your government and the German government have advocated so far?
Quite the contrary. First observation, I'm sure it was a fantastic first romantic date in candlelight among the heads of state and government. Second observation is that you cannot juxtapose growth and austerity. Actually, you need both. We call it growsterity. I know the term is a little bit awkward, but it's quite simple. We have been speaking about growth for a long time because after all, this is a triple crisis. It's a financial crisis, it's a debt crisis, and a growth crisis. And then the question is, what do you do with growth? I think you need to do three things. One, structural changes in each and every member state. That means austerity. Two, you need to push for the internal market and a digital single market. And three, you need to push for free trade. After all, you cannot have deficit-driven growth. If that was the case, then Zimbabwe would probably be the most competitive economy in the world.
So you're telling me that the policies advocated by the new French president are doomed to fail?
I think the basic idea of growth is great, and then we need to start talking about what growth means. For us, growth means structural change, internal and digital single market, and free trade.
No stimulus.
Stimulus, you cannot stimulate on the basis of debt. It's simply impossible. You cannot take loans to pump money into the economy. In that sense, Keynes is a timing question, and the time is not ripe for Keynes right now. The whole basic idea of the euro is when you're doing well, save. When you're doing badly, spend. Unfortunately, we didn't save, therefore we have nothing to spend.
What is your position on euro bonds? We know that it is a pet project for François Hollande, although it was defended earlier by the European Commission. Are you in favour of euro bonds?
Personally, I'm a federalist, so therefore, in the long term, I think the idea of a euro bond is very much worth thinking. But the euro bonds are not, and I repeat this, are not a solution for the current crisis, because basically that would, much like Angela Merkel says, give an incentive for member states to misbehave with their public finances, and we do not want to give anyone that incentive. There has been enough misbehavior already.
Why do you think it will give an incentive to those countries to stop tidying up their finances?
Because basically it'll give the message that, okay, it doesn't really matter if I stimulate my economy a little bit over the limit, because the other Europeans will always end up helping me out. And I think that's absolutely the wrong message to give right now. What we need to see is more AAA countries. We're only 4 in the Eurozone right now, and we need to see all 17 EU member states fulfilling the original Maastricht criteria.
But that's the problem really, because what the Spanish will tell you is that currently they borrow on the markets at outrageously high levels, 6%. The idea of Eurobonds is to help bring down these borrowing costs. How do you do it?
You need double pressure. One pressure is from the markets, in other words, the credit rating institutions, which, for instance, treat countries like Finland, who are taking care of their public finances, very gently. Our rating right now is 1.71%. Interest rate. Compare that to Spain, 6, France, 3. The second thing that you need then is political pressure. We need to combine these two. Why would I be paying the bill in a Eurobond for another member state misbehaving their public finances? What I want to do is to create an incentive for every and each member state to take care of their public finances. And the incentive that I should be paying for it is wrong.
So your position, the position of the Germans, is unlikely to move until the key summit, which will take place at the end of June in Brussels.
Well, it's probably not going to move then either. Basically, the whole idea of a Eurobond, I think, is perhaps valid at the stage when we start getting more and more AAA-rated countries. That's when it works. That's when a Eurobond could be okay. So we're talking 220, perhaps 230, not 5 weeks.
On the tax on financial transactions, what is the position of your government?
Well, the Finnish government has a very nice position in the sense that we, of course, support a global transaction tax. If that doesn't work, then a Europe-wide transaction tax. But then when we start looking at perhaps going into smaller groups, then I think a lot of countries will start losing a competitive taxing edge, and that's when it becomes a little bit problematic. As an own resource for the European Union, I find it quite appealing.
It's appealing, but you know very well that the British will not sign.
Then I think we're in trouble.
So then if Britain is not on board, no way we can implement a tax on financial transactions in Europe.
In an ideal European world, we would have to have a transaction tax with 27 member states. If that fails, I think you're going to need a lot of creativity to move the whole idea forward.
Now, your country, Finland, has long been described as the most Europhile country in Northern Europe, and yet in recent months we've seen the rise of anti-European parties. I'm thinking of the True Finns, as they are called. How do you explain this rise of populism in Finland?
I think actually it's a Europe-wide phenomenon. And for me, it's not a left and right issue, it's a globalist versus localist. And everywhere in Europe we have localists who are anti-EU, anti-Euro, anti-immigration and anti-globalization. And then you have globalists, perhaps like myself, who push for the other agenda. There's a certain frustration about what Europe is. And this frustration then manifests itself in some kind of a populistic movements. We see it from both the left and the right. And I think we just need to improve the way in which Europe is run. Then perhaps we get less populism and more solutions.
That's providing, of course, the 27 EU member states can agree on what needs to be done. But for now, thank you very much, Alexander Stubb. I remind our viewers that you are a Finnish Minister for European Affairs and Foreign Trade. And thank you for watching this edition of The Interview on France 24. Please stay on our channel for more news.